Hey, welcome to the Visual Cast. I'm your host, Alon Hammer, aka Rem. Episode 4 is here, and we have the absolute gem of a human, Eric Mintzer. Eric shares a wealth of valuable and high-level information. It was quite the mind meld to chat with him and pick his brain. We talk about VJing at Camp Bisco, creating interactive installations for massive corporate clients, living and working nomadically off the grid, pretty lights, and of course, the best software in the universe, in the world, in the galaxy, TouchDesigner. For Eric's set, we go over his projection mapping package for the 2022 Tipper and Friends event, an insanely useful workflow for bidding gigs and selling clients, a Lego interactive escape room, and a super cool museum installation. It was really fun talking to Eric, and I know you're going to enjoy this one. It's been awesome to see with each episode new people getting turned on to the podcast. I'm so grateful, and it's just a great journey so far. But please help us reach more people. Like and subscribe here on YouTube, go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and leave us a review, and share the link with any people you think would enjoy to learn, hang out, and hopefully get inspired. So without any further ado, here's the Visual Cast.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
Super excited to have him here. It's a massive honor. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah. Took us a little bit while to get this going, and we were kind of laughing that for two people that should be really good at this kind of stuff, took too long. But I think it's a common theme.
Yeah, I was just telling my friend how while this was happening and we were debugging, my friend in the other room, I was like, a consumer just plugs an HDMI into a TV and it works. And for us, someone promises us 50,000. It works. And then all of a sudden we have $250,000 of these magic black boxes to guarantee success. And then when something doesn't work, it's like, which magic black box is it?
It's just so ridiculous.
And now we're on Zoom.
And now we're on Zoom, exactly, which is starting to cause problems already. So hopefully this won't be too problematic. Well, Eric, I'm super excited to talk with you. You're somewhat of a legend in the visual performing arts world. You've played Camp Bisco, Swanee, Ultra, and many, many, many others. You've created one of the coolest audio-visual shows ever with pretty lights, and you're an absolute master systems engineer. Some of your interactive installations are mind-blowing, and you've worked with all sorts of huge brands. You're also a super prolific digital nomad. So let's start off by understanding, how the hell do you manage to do all of this insane shit and still retain your freedom?
That was very nice of you to assume I do both of those things. I actually do now. Originally it was the same grind that everyone else that's passionate in this industry does, just 60 to 105-hour weeks, 25-hour days. It's still freedom, right? I chose that and thrived on it and loved it. So it really wasn't until the last couple of years where I kind of managed both. Actually, ironically, how do I get all that stuff done? And there's a team that supports and helps program with me, and that's
your company, Imaginex.
Yep. I kind of believe that all technical projects require two people, because an expert knows 90%, and that last 10% is 90% of the struggle. So
totally.
But ironically, having a team didn't really bring me freedom. It just allowed me to be involved with a lot more projects at once or in a single year. I mean, really what brought me freedom was just enough confidence to start telling projects that didn't suit me no, and scaled back down from 40 plus projects a year to the 10 or 15 people and things that I liked working with the most. Yeah.
That's awesome. So having less projects kind of allowed you to retain more freedom and still keep your flow of work and creativity going.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really interesting. I have a bunch of questions about your company later on. I want to kind of go back a little bit to your early career and where you started. I'm not too sure about this. I'm just kind of making assumptions based on some research that I did. But what was the first festival that you went to? And just in general, festivals, was it something that was a big part of your life before you started working in festivals? Or was it kind of coinciding? Like for me, I always went to parties and then realized that I want to be part of this world, and then started photographing, started promoting. And then I was like, okay, well, that's boring. I want to do visuals. Yeah. How was it for you?
Yeah. First festival was Camp Bisco, actually. So it was
Awesome.
Also very full circle, almost a decade later, being visual director of that and managing visual talent on multiple stages, including guest hookup. That was 2010, so that was when Camp Bisco was still run by Hells Angels security in upstate New York.
It was legit back then.
Oh yeah. I still call it the greatest shit show on earth. It is both of those things, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you guys did at Camp Bisco, sorry to cut you off there, but what you guys did at Camp Bisco is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'm just going to show this quickly while you're talking about your experiences, because it's just it's so massive. I love it so much. And this is visuals by Datagramma.
I was going to say, talking about a team, like this was not accomplishable by myself at all. Datagramma, Joao, Theron from Synesthesia, a lot of other really, really key players co-directed and led a lot of significant parts. Yeah, that was my favorite project of the year. Easily.
Yeah, it must have been super nice to have been like you said, you started up going there and then eventually get there as an artist. Was it obvious to you that you wanted to do that?
I mean, it wasn't obvious when I started. I was just going to music festivals for fun. It was I was just a fan. It was an amazing place for me to escape the default world and be with like-minded people that I still think creates a really positive impact, like emotionally and socially in society. Mm-hmm. There's kind of this key moment, really, really early college. I had a poker startup. That was my first serious startup in high school. I did it for 5 years. And when I started that company, it was kind of, how do I make as much money as possible? And I saw these laws changing in the US that was going to make poker legal online. And long story short, I was miserable. The startup failed, but even if it was successful and rich, I was not happy on my day-to-day operations. Mm-hmm. So thankfully it did fail, which made me reevaluate that I love producing output, like making something, whether it's digital or physical, usually digital. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to spend most of my life making things. So the next thing that I do has to be something that I love. And that's really how I entered this industry, was just merging my two favorite things at the time, still two of my favorite passions, music and programming. And that was the core foundation of myself entering the career, of Imaginex's foundation. There's a blend of those two things.
That's awesome. So you went to University of Maryland. Did you study visual arts or anything around that world?
No, I went to school for business, self-taught programmer since I was tiny, like 3 feet tall.
What was
So I
the
decided to go to
catalyst?
school to learn how to monetize it.
So you went to school for business, but you were always programming. What was the catalyst for that?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to go to 100 level classes for software. Made no sense. I've been programming for 10, 15 years by the time I entered college. And I know how to teach myself code, and learning in a lecture hall did not seem correct for me, especially with people entering for the first year.
Right.
So the idea behind going to business school was to learn how to monetize my software and myself. And I mean, honestly, I hated it. I thought the business school was like super outdated. I felt that University of Maryland and probably most business schools, if you're not tracked for accounting or finance, if you go into marketing, management, you're kind of looked down upon. Like, why are you entering a less rich business field?
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I love University of Maryland. They provided so much, and especially some of my early successes and friendships and collaborations, but it wasn't through classrooms. It was through clubs, essentially, and mentors, professors.
Interesting. And you said you were coding since you were a young boy. Like, what was the inspiration of that? Do your parents work in this kind of field? What made you pick that up?
Yeah, no, my parents weren't in it. We're not in that field at all. Mostly video games.
Interesting.
I was like, they did video games in middle school, and so my early intro to software development was early middle school, and downloading bots and hacks for the games I would play, and then wondering how those worked, and then started building my own.
Hell yeah. Did you have the what was it called? The genie on the Game Boy? It's called do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
It was like a module that you put it inside the Game Boy, and then you put the games inside the thing, and then it runs like its own code per game. Yeah, it was sick. I can't remember what it's called. Game Genie. I think it was called Game Genie. And it was like a super, physical hardware hack. But I had it. I was like, right away, I was like, okay, I gotta get one of those. That's so cool.
That's so cool.
So you were just interested in kind of like modding and finding different like things to do in the world that you were enjoying, which was video games. And then the transition from there and then into business school, what was like the first, I don't like to say piece of art, but what was the first like piece of creation that you identified as art and was kind of like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this?
Yeah. I won't think too hard about this because something came to mind right away. I doubt it was the first, but it was very early. I used to go to this music festival called Big Dub Festival in Maryland, I think. Awesome little 3,000 person fest, very homey vibes, hippie vibes too, hippie electronic vibes. It was run, maybe still is, by this group called Badass Raves, and a lot of my foundational work was working my ass off for like 3 months to do a Badass Rave New Year's event for their 1,200 person show. But I built a giant LED flower of life.
Oh wow.
This was a year after LEDs became addressable. A year before this, when I got into LED mapping, you had to do this thing called multiplexing or Charlieplexing, where you essentially had to wire individual wires to every LED you wanted to control on an LED strip. And then all of a sudden, you got these chip on board LEDs. More commonly, that got famous was WS2811, but it was a pixel or a strip of pixels, and you could say pixel 60 turn blue. And I built this beautiful 15-foot tall flower of life LED installation with like 5,000 LEDs with 2 of my friends. This was before I discovered TouchDesigner. I was really into Arduino and C coding. So I built my own spatial pixel mapping software like 13 years ago, 15 years ago on Arduino with C. So I was able to take, these LEDs were shaped spatially in a strange configuration. I was able to make the flower blossom from the center out, and such a complicated project because there's no previs or anything at that time. That was
and you're not working within a framework like TouchDesigner where you have some sort of milieu of like, okay, this goes to this, goes to this. You're just like figuring it out as you're going along. Super impressive. I'm sure it must have felt really good.
It was beautiful. It became kind of the meetup spot for fans at the event. Like, hey, if we lose each other, let's meet here. And obviously fire performers and drummers and all these meetups kept kind of forming at that spot. So it, early memory that really kind of inspired me. Like, wow, this is creating memories for other people and moments. And it's cool.
It's so cool. And being part of the festival experience outside of an attendee is a very unique experience. I think that a lot of us take it for granted or are jaded towards it. I know myself for sure, super jaded towards festivals and parties. I've been to so many, it's like whatever. But there's always that special moment when you're part of the crew, you're part of the production, and the festival opens and the people start coming, and there's this huge emotion of excitement and anticipation and nervousness, and I really love it. And I've realized throughout the years that the same emotion and feelings that I get from being in front of a house and having everybody rush into the dance floor is the same emotion that I had rushing into the dance floor. It's just kind of from a different perspective, and it kind of reminds us that like we're all one in these moments. We're all the production, the attendees, the artists, everybody's together, trying to do something elevating and special. And VJing at a festival is a very unique experience. What's it like for you? What are some highs that you have of VJing at a festival? What are some lows? I'm sure there's many, many lows, but share what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. I kind of started my VJ career being a festival VJ. So I was VJing for musicians I've never heard of before. Obviously, I have no idea their set, or even sometimes they're like subgenre of EDM.
Right.
So that is a interesting way to prepare a set, being a house festival VJ, especially 8 or 10 years ago when these artists didn't have guest VJs. So
right.
Now if you're the house VJ for EDC or Ultra, you're more of the house video tech and making sure all the guests are. But back then, maybe the headliner or two had their own VJ. So you were VJing for, 10 hours straight, 3 days in a row, trying not to repeat content at all.
Even back then, I can't even imagine. There wasn't even, I guess Resolume had the library, but it was so small.
I've never used Resolume. I don't know how to use Resolume, but you're downloading shitty clips. Except for Beatbowl, that was only good free clips at the time. And I mean, but it did kind of form my style, being a house festival VJ. My visual dynamic is slow and evolving. It's running clips that are minutes long instead of loops. I am pretty heavy on videography, drone shots, and other kind of video shots. That was also, when there wasn't good VJ clips 10, 12 years ago, there was good video clips that you could buy online or find for free
right.
Mountainscapes and oceanscapes and whatever.
Yeah.
So
slap on an Edge call it a day.
Yeah. Lots of kaleidoscope mirroring tiling stuff too. Yeah. Nice. You're probably been doing these and waiting for someone to use that word. I'm waiting for the
words. I have a few keywords here. I'm gonna, as the artists come in, I'm gonna add more and more. I'm really upset because I wanted to add one for you that was point clouds and made everything point, so I just didn't have the time. But next time you're on, I'm going to have that ready to go.
That is not a quick effect to just throw in for up to a button. I'd be impressed if you did that. It took months to build that out.
Top to chop to chop to sop to chop to sop back to a top. The usual workflow.
Next time we do this, I should have set up some connects and we'll try to stream the point cloud.
Yeah, well, instead of you, that might be easier. It might be easier to stream point cloud data than the fucking video that we've been trying to do. Wow. So yeah, I mean, tell me more. I want to hear more about your VJing before we move on to something else. I want to hear what have been some struggles? What are some, kind of, I don't know if advice is the right word, but just give us a little bit more, because you've been to so many massive festivals, also on the VJing side, also on the technical kind of, mapping and all that kind of curation and front of house kind of management. There's so many things involved there. So many things can go wrong. So many things can go right. There's those moments of bliss where the light, the lasers, the VJ, everybody's in this crazy flow and jumping together, and those moments are magical. Please share with us some of those moments of yours.
Yeah, definitely. Camp Bisco is definitely a very magical feeling. One, as I mentioned, full circle is my first festival. So to be invited back a decade later as visual director, managing their 2 of 3 main stages, helping design the video array, making sure the headliners that needed special red carpet treatment were also happy with the stage design. We're also able to roll in extra stage video elements. Only on the video side I was really involved with. And then manning the station and doing visuals for all of these artists that I love. Over the course of the weekend, I would do 20 or 30 sets.
Nice.
Was magical and tiring.
Oh yeah.
I think I had a hotel room. I don't even remember because I never went to it. I could, I have to be back on site in 4 hours, so I don't want to waste an hour round trip to get to a hotel room, and the med tent was right there. No one was in it, so I could just nap in the med tent instead.
That's funny.
I think one of the coolest things for me on being a house visualist, and it worked out really well, even though it wasn't intentional, was because I kind of started my career that way. VJing for music that I loved was obviously special and flowing. I was able to feel like a band member, even if it was a one-off gig for me for that band. But what worked out really, really well was being able to meet so many people in the industry so quickly, so many managers of these artists, because they're handing me thumb drives 5 minutes before the set, asking me to convert and play shit, handing me a set list, being like, for this song, do X, Y. I'm like, that's not how this works. And then meeting guest visual artists, some of these people are lifelong friends. So really quickly, in a matter of a year, and every year after that, I've gotten to know so many people in the industry.
What's awesome.
And that has continuously helped with collaborations. And when I want to hire, I just know who I vibe well with or like to work with. I could, see who's passionate and talented and determined to reach a solution by seeing how they work under pressure. Which is such a key metric I look for when hiring technical talent, not just visual talent. So that, another awesome moment, just doing EDC Vegas for Pretty Lights in 2015, 2014 was awesome, just because of the massive scale of that festival. VJing on a stage that is probably $5 to $15 million worth of gear.
Jesus.
And I'm fucking, I don't know, 23 years old. So, that was epic.
Yeah.
Could say
It's
the
really,
same thing about Ultra.
yeah, I mean, it's like playing these big name festivals is such a, it's like an honor of some sort, you know, like a rite of passage of some sort. Like it's like a name drop, you know, like when you meet like a famous celebrity or something, like, oh, I met this, you know, famous celebrity. It's like, oh yeah, I played EDC, and like everybody knows like right away what you're talking about. It's like yeah, it's a great feeling. I definitely
It's so
could
funny though, because
appreciate
you're
that.
right, it is like a name drop. Those aren't the festivals I
Totally.
most love or I
No,
like
no,
vibe with
right.
artfully. And like I love EDC for growing so massively and having,
Yeah.
you know, a profit need and Live Nation ownership or something. Like they've actually, I think, done a really good job of holding on to a lot of the roots of EDM culture and Plur, which is something hardly anyone that's scaled to even half their size has been able to do.
Yeah.
So like lots of love and respect for that. But when I think of my happiest and proudest moments, they're usually smaller festivals.
For sure. Oh, 100%.
And
Intimacy with the audience, intimacy with the artists, the music you like, right? Because if it's a smaller festival, most likely you're going to be at a place where you're more vibing with the music. No, it's like, it's a totally a name drop in the whole sense of it, that it's like, not necessarily my top thing, but you know what it is, and you're going to be impressed, and I feel impressed saying that I was there. You know, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good thing. Yeah, so, okay, so you had a pretty strong transition from VJing and being kind of like a visual artist and, you know, making content or curating content to kind of a more technical side. I'd love to hear a little bit about that, like maybe what was, if there was a catalyst for that, what was it? And kind of, you know, how do you view yourself in that sense? Like, do you view yourself as a technical artist, or do you view yourself as like a software engineer?
Yeah, good questions.
Thanks.
How do I view myself? We don't put labels here, right? No, you know, I mean, I've been a software engineer my whole life. I've been doing that 40 to 100 hours a week since middle school. And, you know, I did that common mistake that sounds like a really good idea where it's like, oh, I love programming. I'm really good at it. Let's start a programming company. And it's just like, you know, someone that loves photography, let's start a photography company.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you're not
It's your
taking
work.
photos anymore. You're managing clients. You're making sure payroll comes in. You don't actually get to do the thing that you love and why you started it. And, you know, I went through that same phase, starting my software company. Even when I was house VJ for these festivals, I didn't get the gigs because I was a really good VJ. I got the gigs because I was trusted to make sure the stage has high uptime. And if something goes wrong, people trusted that I could hold it together, come up with a solution quickly, and make everyone feel really good about it. And, you know, that's 100% why I got those gigs. I think I'm an okay VJ. You know, at this point, I would definitely look at myself as a technical director. How that transition kind of looked was when I started Imaginex, and it was like a one-person team and eventually growing. I was 100% music industry, right? I combined music, programming, and that's what I sought out. I got hired by this dude met me on the internet on the TouchDesigner forums back when there was only like a few hundred people using TouchDesigner. You know, there was like 2 new posts a week on the forums, no Facebook group or anything yet. And some dude reached out and he was like, "Oh, I'm in Philly. You're only 2 hours from me. You're like the closest TouchDesigner programmer to me in the entire country. You want to come over to my house and like hack on things, like mess around with code?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure."
So awesome.
So, you know, just 2 strangers meeting up from the internet. He ended up being one of my very early mentors and good friend, Peter Parker. His company has
Spider-Man.
been rebranded to BG.
You know
Yeah.
Spider-Man? What the fuck?
Yeah, I know Spider-Man.
Holy
he's a cool
shit.
dude. He's a
He does
really
TouchDesigner?
amazing technical
Spider-Man does
director
TouchDesigner? That
and
makes a lot of sense.
developer.
Because he
Yeah.
likes the nodes and the webs and everything.
Exactly. He brought me in to do a gig for Fashion Week New York for Vice and
Oh, cool.
a few other players. And this was my first gig outside of the music industry. And just the stress levels, getting a good night's sleep, having organization from someone that's been doing it for longer, because I was just kind of winging it and running into the darkness and, you know, learning and messing up constantly. And then, you know, getting paid 10x what I would charge for a rave.
Yeah. At least
to
10x.
do a runway show. Wasn't, it felt so good. Like,
Yeah.
I felt healthier, and I really enjoyed programming this runway show, and I had zero care for fashion or anything I was doing with the client, but working with an awesome mentor, working with a team, frankly, working with in a different industry that has longer timelines, clear scope of works. It's something I really like. And as I grew and evolved Imaginex, the percent of time we focused on corporate clients or corporate entertainment clients, grew from 0% to 30, 40% of our time. One thing that was really cool is because I started in the music industry, Imaginex kind of created this brand recognition of the crazy young guys, like with all the new experimental tech. So when the corporate entertainment industry started picking us up, they didn't want a keynote speaker. They were hiring us because they specifically wanted the cool new crazy tech.
Right.
So the EDM world became my experimental playground because these EDM clients want the coolest shit. The corporate entertainment clients want the coolest shit that's 2 years old because they can't fail because there's brand recognition behind it.
Right. And if they see it working, then they're much more confident to be like, oh, well, that might work.
Yeah. So it was great. I was able to have EDM clients pay for the R&D. They got the cool new shit first because they were willing to take a risk on me or on the tech, constantly still do. And then once that was more mature, I then had something that was kind of more productized and was able to offer to these corporate clients that wanted to do cool shit.
Yeah.
So I still got to do cool shit, even though I was working for a shoe company or a telephone company. They still wanted holograms or whatever
you almost
the analogy is.
You kind of hack the system by, you doing your raves and your parties, and then you take the same thing that you're doing at raves and parties and doing it for corporations, which is like, I mean, I haven't really heard of that, to be honest. That's pretty impressive. It actually brings me to another question. When you're balancing this kind of not lifestyle, but when you're balancing this work and the different clients, when it comes to corporate clients, and when it comes to creative clients, when it comes to performing, problem solving, or making something, it's all creative energy. It's all kind of creative solutions or creative energy being outputted. What is something about that you can, put your finger on that really sticks out to you in terms of balancing that creative energy?
Are you asking like, how do I balance that creative energy with my clients / collaborators / employees or hirees or within myself?
That's a great question. I mean, it's totally up to you. I feel like the question was aimed towards like external, but inside of yourself is just as interesting.
I'll focus on the external part because otherwise I'll probably pause and I'll like get in this existential deep thought about my two things. So we're coming back.
Sorry about that.
No
not
worries.
sure what happened. just totally froze. Yeah, please continue that stream.
So the balance on the creative with these clients, there's one of the hardest things when I was a one-man team was balancing that. I have a tools and freelancers and struggle with this, right? It's really hard to have a deep creative meeting with the client and then start talking about money and saying, hey, this is going to cost more, or like we need to reevaluate the scope. Like it's really hard doing both. Yeah. And it's not like a skill issue or a time issue. It's like an energy issue. It's, you trying to create this really free flowing, beautiful environment with your client. And then to somehow figure out how to switch gears and talk about money is just a huge energy shift. And it's very, very difficult doing that by yourself. It's easier now for me when I have a team and I can separate business conversations with a different person than the person doing the creative conversations. It's almost like this good cop, bad cop situation. Actually, now I'm kind of back doing it to myself. I'm doing money negotiations and rate those on client. Give it its own spot in the conversation. Don't throw it at a client during a creative meeting. Like prep the client beforehand, send an email saying, hey, let's set up a call. We need to talk business, make it its own call. Or if you need to squish it in at the end of a creative brief, set that up ahead of time. Set up your 45-minute creative brief and say, hey, at 3:45, let's hard stop. We need to go over financial stuff and separate those spaces completely.
Very good advice.
Yeah. The other thing with like creative flow with clients, and kind of like expecting you to just paint their vision, which is obviously probably not the best vision because they don't understand under the hoods and the experience that you have. Or they might come to you with an open book saying, hey, you're the expert, we're hiring you. Show me whatever you could show me, do whatever you could do. And obviously a lot of people somewhere in the middle. I used to almost like have these different ways I would handle these different archetypes. I don't really anymore. I take leadership in these creative meetings as the expert in a very confident way because I am confident with my recommendations that I make at this point. And it also comes looking for creative work with people at this point in my career that will usually listen to advice when I come in as an expert. And my clients also want to make sure I understand their vision. And honestly, this is, I think, going to become the most important role for artists and animators and VJs moving forward, isn't their artistic talent, which is very important. If you're working for one artist, that artist is picking you because you match their vibe. But if you're working for many artists or festivals, role and what you're going to be hired for is more on the creative direction and the prompting, whatever. But you're getting hired because a client's going to trust you that you could execute their vision. They don't care if you animate it yourself. They don't care if you feed it to AI. What they care is that you understand what they want. And could execute.
We're gonna soon jump into what Eric has prepared for us. I would like to take this moment to ask everybody to like and subscribe. We're trying to build an audience here. I want to eventually make this a live stream. As we get better with the technical problems and build an audience, that will definitely be a fun thing to do. So like and subscribe. Eric, you have an amazing company called Imaginex. You guys do really, really cool stuff. And just kind of, this website, like you said to me yesterday, is not updated for a few years, but I mean, just look at these clients, Adobe, doing an app controlled model of a city with projection mapping. I mean, this is just super cool, high end, amazing, stuff. What was, kind of the, what's your kind of top gig that you guys done in Imaginex, maybe something recently. Tell me a little bit about your partners, like where do they come into the picture? How did you find them? And a side question is, we kind of spoke about it a little bit, but working for big clients like this, like Nokia, Spotify, AT&T, how do you navigate this kind of very strong commercial environment?
Yeah, great questions. It's funny, like top gigs or recent gigs, maybe something that's not even on our website. It's such a hard thing to categorize. Is it something that's just like a financially rich gig? Is it a name brand recognition? Is it something I'm like deeply personally proud at? And all of those have very different answers. I guess like without highlighting an individual one right now, because I'm sure I'll do that in a couple minutes. Generally speaking, my top productions in terms of just like, well, Imaginex came in and took over. We handled A to Z, and like it came out very, very clean and professionally done. Are our trade show activations, AdobeCon, VidCon, Comic-Con, auto shows, CES. Right, when you go to CES and you see 300 or 1,000 booths in these little 20-foot by 20-foot spaces, right? These are all companies that are paying a buttload of money to just rent that floor space for the week. And these companies will have 6 to 7 figure budgets to design a one-off booth to show off the experience of their unreleased speaker or whatever it is. I love designing for these, right? We get all this unreleased information about a new product before it's launched. We find out about the stuff 6 months ahead of time, so we have an appropriate time frame to do something. And to test something. We get to do a full mock build weeks before we show up on site. I actually have a line item in all my contracts, my invoices for these activation builds for quality assurance. I've always had it. And my quality assurance line item used to be paying my programmers and to just like test shit and see if we could break it and fix the breakage. And things would slip through the cracks, always. Because, when you build your own experience, instead of pushing the knob to the left, what happens when you push it to the right? What happens if you, triple click instead of single click, and you have this way you think quality assurance should be done? And all of a sudden you go live and the 8-year-old just like swipes from the right to left of the screen, opens up the secret Windows setting menu and like locks it. You're like, oh, fucking think of that.
You can never ever know what general population is going to do with your thing. You can, especially when it's like, it really is general population. You're not making something that's like agnostic to like a hardware operation, or you're not going to have operators where it's like random Joe Schmo to like, little tiny kid. How do you never know. Yeah. So what do you do?
We still do our quality assurance line item. We charge $2,000 and we throw a party, and we invite, bring a DJ, open bar. We'll invite a few dozen people. We make them sign NDAs. We remove all branding. So we'll have to replace some digital assets so people don't know who the client is.
Interesting.
And everyone just drinks and parties, has a good time, and hey, our experience is there, and we just watch how people use it.
That is such a great idea.
Since we started doing that, our success rate of like not having issues on site has just gone through the roof. And we get a free party out of it. So
a paid party by Adobe. I love that. That's like the ultimate. That's such.
But again, right? Your clients don't care how you get to the solution. So this is how our company determines the best way to have a really successful output, and it works. And we're really proud of our repeat clients because that just shows so much trust and happiness with our results. So we're not shy or hiding it. We tell them we're taking this money and we're throwing a party, and people are like, "Whoa, that's genius!"
So that's a really awesome idea. I love that, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of be in a comfortable, safe space with your thing breaking, that's not like when you break it, you know, you're kind of like very technically like, okay, where's the crash dump? Like what happened? When you're in a bunch of people, it's much more than just breaking it. It's also how are they interfacing with it? What are they liking? What are they not liking?
1,000%.
It's a totally different experience, and it actually makes me think like it's kind of similar to when you create a piece. You're working on a piece of art for whatever, it's, you know, a bunch of months. You're rendering, you're animating, you're this. You don't know what a first time watching this is like. Like you just can't, because you've seen it so many times. You're so connected to it, and it's such an important part of the art process is like seeing what people are going to like about the piece, you know, like what triggers people, what makes people feel good. So having that external feedback that's not just from your own, you know, ego and experience with it is so valuable. It's really, really awesome idea.
Valuable. And maybe me and the clients are wrong in our hypothesis, and the emotional connection to the piece didn't come out the way that we thought. We now still have 3 weeks to correct it. So
yeah.
Just studying user experience,
clients must love that.
So valuable.
Yeah, they must love that. Especially how you.
There's another part here.
Please.
Oh no, go ahead. I was gonna change.
No, I was just gonna say you prefaced it so good with like they sign an NDA, we take out the branding, so like a big client wouldn't care because they're not even there's nothing there. It's such a smart idea. I love it. No, please, what were you gonna say?
There's a second part to your question that I can't remember, but I thought it was interesting. What was that?
It was about Imaginex and your partners and kind of navigating that commercial world.
Right. I actually have a huge recommendation on this. And fortunately, someone else advised this to me early on, and it was so valuable. Most people in our industry, whether you're a freelancer or even a startup or small company or a large company, you know, if you're creating experiences for people, whether it's animation or art installations, it never gets easier to get out of that cycle of look for clients, land the client, work, finish the client. You're like, fuck, what's next? Look. That doesn't really end because, as we all know, it takes a while to win a client. You're gonna, if you're really good at it, you're gonna win 1 every 3 leads. And to win that lead, you're gonna have to hold their right. You're gonna have to hold their. You're gonna have to hold their hand through the whole process. You're holding their hand through 3 to 5 plus clients. Win one of them, and that whole process will take weeks, sometimes months. And you're not going. I mean, you'll get better at winning clients, and spending less time winning a client is such a key thing. Because you know, if you could spend 20 hours, 750 hours to win a client, that is a significant amount of time savings over a year. But really what I recommend to all of my friends in this field, whether you're working for musicians or corporate clients or looking to switch or balance, is don't try to land one-offs directly from the client. If you're trying to go on tour, that's a personal connection, and you know, they're going to give you 5 months of work a year. Awesome, go for it. But if you're trying to work for many artists or many events, it's just too much time sunk in trying to win them. Instead, you want to sell yourself to the hubs of these clients. In the corporate world, those are brand agencies. I don't sell myself to Adidas and Nokia and whatever. I sell myself to these brand agencies that are bringing in $5 or $50 million of revenue a year. They have a whole sales team that every single day is selling. And I come to them with my toolkit saying, hey, I'm going to give your agency more ways to be successful, more offerings for your clients. I do projection mapping. I do touch screens, etc. You know, if you're an animator,
you only have to sell them. Once you sell them, they have access to everything. It's very good advice. You're also, when you're dealing with brand agencies, they know what is quality. They know what their clients want. So that's really good advice.
Yeah, and they're gonna
I
take
really
a
like
huge cut, right? You're gonna charge them $5,000. They're gonna charge their client $15,000.
Doesn't matter.
Who cares? They're gonna be
as
giving
long
you
as
reoccurring work.
exactly, and as long as you're getting the pay that you wanted, you don't want to deal with the overhead of charging more. Like the overhead of charging more is very expensive.
No, anyone watching this didn't get into this to sell to clients full time. You got into this to make your art, and you could, over a few years, you'll build up 5 agencies that trust you, and they will keep you busy for the entire year. And you've just only sold to 5 people, and you don't even have to sell again.
Yeah, that's really awesome advice. Okay, we're gonna switch gears now. We're gonna get ready for a screen share. But before we do that, TouchDesigner. Why is it the best tool ever? Why is it better than all other tools? Why is it so fucking good? And why is Greg such a genius? Please.
Could I? Do we have 24 hours left, or? It's crazy. Like I've been programming my whole life. I've gone through about 12 programming language with pretty extreme proficiency to advanced level, and pretty much that meant every 2 years I was teaching myself a new programming language, from web dev to software language, like app languages. And when I discovered TouchDesigner, it changed my life. I've now been using it for 10 years. When I discovered it, I was going to hackathons in college. So, right, we a bunch of college kids get thrown on a bus. We go to University of Michigan or whatever university. We get thrown to a gym. We have 36 hours to build a product from scratch, and with 1,000 other people. Everyone's in teams of 4 building product from scratch. And when I first started doing hackathons, I knew Arduino, I knew C, and a bunch of other languages I started forgetting because they were in my past. And I'd have fun and not win anything. And then halfway through going to hackathons, I discovered TouchDesigner. And one of the rules of hackathons is you cannot come to a hackathon with preconceived work. You have to start from scratch. I started getting disqualified at hackathons because I was building entire softwares and apps in 24 hours, and no judge would believe me that I came in with an empty
That's so funny. That's so
and
funny.
I started telling other programmer friends, I'm like, I'm not a really, I'm not the best programmer in the world. And at the time when I was learning TouchDesigner, I wasn't great at TouchDesigner, but I found a tool that lets you program 100 times faster. For those that don't know, TouchDesigner is a node-based language, just like the node piece of Unreal or Notch is a very good analogy. But it's not just a visual tool. It's really, really good at parsing data. So you could take in any type of data set, whether it's artistic, like trying to understand a connect or a body, or even human emotion through facial recognition. Are they smiling? If so, trigger content, trigger sounds. You can also take in data sets from the internet. So you could take in any public data source, from weather to every single satellite and where they are on Earth, and then visualize that on a previs. And I could build this whole thing in 30 minutes. And you could output it however you want. You could output it through an LED wall, through sound. You could spin a motor. You could talk to an Arduino. You could build an entire amusement park and, control the entire ride dynamics of how that self-driving car is navigating, which way everyone's
Jared
facing.
does that. Now, Jared goes on cruises. Jared is one of the TouchDesigner developers. He goes on cruises. I'm not going to say for who, but he goes on cruises and he makes all their like all their amusement park rides on the cruise is run through TouchDesigner, which is, it's so open-ended. And I think that besides for being visual scripting, which, all node-based languages are, I think TouchDesigner is extremely unique in the sense that, like you said, it parses data in such an interesting way. The ability to go from a channel to a texture to a surface operator, 3D, 2D, audio, or whatever you want to call it, sound waves, is extremely powerful. And there's not many softwares that really do it. Houdini's really the only one that can come close to what TouchDesigner doing, and it's not real time at all. Notch, I appreciate Notch. Well, I'm not going to lie. I don't like Notch. I used to love Notch. Been using Notch for like almost 8 years, but I don't like it anymore. But either way, Notch is close to that as well, because they do allow you to move from like something like cloners to particles to fields, and you can share data between those three things. But those three things are all 3D. So that's great. That's useful. But the ability to go from 2D to 3D to channels is extremely powerful. And then you add in Python to the mix, and you really can do anything. So yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head in terms of like what's so special about it.
I can't recommend it enough. Like,
no,
it is a programming language / environment, but you don't need to be a programmer. It's like a great place for someone to learn. You don't even like realize you're programming. If this is your first experience programming, you're just connecting pictures together, but you're like able to write software by connecting pictures together. And
I also always advise people, if they're going into motion graphics or they're going into real time, start with TouchDesigner. Don't go to Blueprints, don't go to Notch. Start with TouchDesigner, because if you can understand visual scripting from TouchDesigner, and you can understand visual scripting from other programs for sure, but if you can start with TouchDesigner, any visual scripting language you pick up is going to be like that, because you have the extreme basics of data and structure in TouchDesigner that is so far advanced than other systems. I think it creates like almost a logic in your brain that is an open framework logic. You know what I mean? Like just simple things like math things, right? Like add, subtract of textures. Most programs don't allow you to do that. They allow you to composite, right? But when you think of a texture of like, what am I doing when I'm compositing A and B with an add? Like what does that mean, right? Like I know what it looks like from Photoshop and After Effects, but what is it actually doing? And in TouchDesigner, you really get that kind of understanding of what it is. And I think it's extremely valuable to start in TouchDesigner, even if you're not going to use it as your end product, even if you're not even going to make art in it, just programming in it, like you said, is super valuable. So with that said, let's jump into what you have prepared for us. I'm super excited to see. And let's get it rolling. We have a beautiful desktop here with 8 versions of TouchDesigner, a tipper folder, and what else could we get here fast?
What secret things could you find out that that
I
I'm
like
working
the tipper
on?
folder and I am the show. Those are both the folders that I would go into.
Yeah, I am the show folder on all 12 of my computers.
I am the show.
That's my most recent. So.
I love it.
Your PL folder that I'm not going to open up because it's got some new things.
We're going to talk into that after this as well. I want to definitely dive into the Pretty Lights thing.
Yeah, you could try.
Well, just some general knowledge.
Yeah, you're like, Eric, I think you could really use a drink right now.
Yeah.
Just get me drunk and open up about it. No, I would love to talk about Pretty Lights stuff. You kept saying you can't wait to see what I have prepared. I don't prepare these kind of things. I just like to wing it and show people things. And so ask questions and maybe you will discover something cool.
Okay. Why do you have I am the show and I is the show? Is that like a non-binary thing? Like
I am the show is the current thing I'm working on, and this laptop once was like doing 2 projects at once, and I needed to separate the show folder essentially.
Got it.
As my laptop was being passed around.
Got it.
So
okay, I want to see some projection mapping like projects, something that showcases big projection mapping.
All right, sweet. If you quick, I'm gonna screen back on here. I'll show you a little sneak peek of how I did the projection mapping for Tipper and Friends event at Swanee in 2020 and 2022. And right, I do a lot of projection mapping with Tipper. That's actually my role. Tipper's team is their projectionist. And, it's more than just showing up with a couple projectors and obviously site planning and figuring out what lines you need. That's a necessary part. But I'm also the technical artist manager when it comes to the projection stuff. So I'm not creating any of the visuals for Tipper's team, right? Tipper will bring in a few of their people in their roster, depending on what type of set and vibe he's feeling for that weekend. So now I need to make sure these animators could create content for a stage that is not rectangular. And on his roster, he has all different types of animators. People that are heavy on 3D workflows, where I could just give them a 3D file and UV map it. And, people with heavy 2D workflows that are more psychedelia, that are less familiar on working with a complex 3D stage. So I'll kind of show you how I prepare the projection mapping and create these packets that any animator and any tool, whether it's Adobe or C4D or Maya, could create content for it. So the stage was beautiful. The team built this a lot out of local shrub.
Amazing.
Literally day one, they're just sending their fabrication team around the park, grabbing branches and sticks and just organizing them by shape, size, and length on the ground.
That's awesome. Who's the artist that did this? I forgot his name.
Crap, what's his name?
I also
haven't brain fart on that.
Tip of my tongue.
I'll call it out if I remember.
Yeah, I'll find it.
So that's what the stage looked like after they built it. And this is challenging, right? All the animators, they want to prepare custom content weeks or months before, but this stage was built a week and a half before. So now I have, as soon as this thing's done, I need to 3D scan it, clean up the models, prepare it, and deliver it to the animators ASAP, because every single day represents 10 or 15% of the total amount of time they have to curate an experience. So I showed up with different types of scanners to scan this thing. Here's what the final scan looked like. Scan 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
And then clean up. Yeah, classic.
Oh god, and then I go into the cleanup and I have 10 more versions. Let's open the one that says 6. So I have a couple different 3D scanning options. Now I own high quality LiDAR sensors. At the time, I did not own high quality LiDAR sensors. So I have drone photogrammetry, where you take 100 photos and you stitch it together and hope that it stitches well. I also brought a Connect sensor, which is great for 3D scanning small objects, very challenging for big objects. This was a photogrammetry. So
nice.
Took a ton of photos with the drone. Did a scan where I get the full depth, really, really good detail with photogrammetry, which is
nice.
A beautiful option for some artists. And I'm very good at cleaning up models. It just takes a little bit of experience. I actually mostly use MeshLab for my model cleanup. There's
color filters,
hundreds of tools, both deleting stray points, depolygonizing. So, my 2 million verts go down to 200,000 in a very organized way. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's the best tool, but it's a free tool, and there's lots of
MeshLab is great.
Yeah. Also great for converting between almost any type of 3D object and model.
Does MeshLab does MeshLab generate a point like a photogrammetry, or you generated that outside of MeshLab?
No, I use a different tool for that.
Okay.
I can't even remember what the tool is called. Just because I don't do photogrammetry anymore. And then I have a good LiDAR. Okay.
Nice.
I was also using a local photogrammetry tool, so shit would run for 45 minutes, and then I'm like, oh, it didn't work. Let me delete some photos, add new photos, run for 45 minutes. It's painful.
Yeah, it's painful.
So I have this 3D model, and now if you're a 3D animator, you could, if this was UV mapped properly, which should be done in a different tool, you could just... What other keywords do you have? I want to trigger your whole set.
What do you like to know?
I would.
So you UV map it and then you provide it to the 3D artists so that they can actually make content on it. You also provide a pixel map, like a 2D pixel map, so artists can do a different type of workflow?
Yeah, so I hand over this little template, and this is the exact same template I do for Camp Bisco and giant music festivals for guests that are coming to the stage. Just a quick description. I mean, if you guys have worked festivals, you love when they give this to you, and it's accurate and it's very right. Both of those.
I've never seen such a nice document, to be honest.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is great.
So, right, quick overview of the stage you're about to perform on. I'm highlighting there's also an LED wall. Don't forget you're outputting to that. Output options. So I'm giving people different ways to send content to me based off of their comfort levels, their computer ability, their output numbers. Maybe this animator just wants to send me an HD feed because that's just how their workflow is. I want to accept that too. I have NDI and capture card setups. I always push for NDI because it's much lower latency than any USB capture card and actually any PCIe capture card.
Especially now with 10 gigabit switches and ports. I mean, you can buy like a $200 10 gigabit USB-C port for your computer, and then that's like $200. I've been pushing a lot of festivals to just, instead of renting media servers, or they still need a media server, but instead of renting like a big video switcher, just buy 3 USB-C 10 gigabit adapters. That's all you need, and maybe like a small little switch, and it's less than a rental. Continue.
No, I love it. Same. I used to, freight for $3,000 round trip, my like media server racks, and now 99% of my gigs I can run off of laptops, and part of the reason is NDI with high gigabit Ethernet ports and sharing video content that wise.
Yeah. I mean, we're 5 maybe less years away from 2110 being in everybody's laptop and just outputting.
You're the one that told me about it, and I was like, 100
gigabits of yeah. Well, I mean, we just had a call with NVIDIA, and it's like the
I've never heard of them.
Yeah. The facing of what 2110 is versus like what it actually is so different. Like we had a half an hour call, and we didn't even get past like how it's broken into packets. It's very, very intricate. I hope that, because like NDI is also intricate, but for us, plug and play, easy to do. I have a feeling, I hope that it will also become the same thing for 2110. But right now, it's like super convoluted and expensive, unfortunately. But it's like 2110, if anybody doesn't know, it's basically spout over NDI. So it's direct from GPU, direct onto IP, whereas NDI is actually farsed from your GPU down to your CPU and then out through your network. It kind of goes a little bit in different places.
Nuts.
Yep.
I feel like there's going to be so many things that come out other than just sharing like video, because uncompressed video is data, right? Your RGB values could just hold
literally
8-bit values. So now you could stream, you can have almost like a GPU cluster potentially across computers. There's gonna be crazy shit that comes out with that tech.
I mean, that's what they're using it for. That's what, in virtual production, you have one computer rendering an inner frustrum, but it gets sent to all the servers that are clustered. So it's like exactly what you said. You have like one GPU rendering for a whole cluster, which you can do now, but you're going to be latent. You're not going to be, you're going to have to sync everything in a very specific way. And virtual production specifically, it's not really conducive because you need to be locked to a Genlock. Wait, stay here. This document is super cool.
Yeah. I'm going back to that document. I was opening something on my secondary screen at the same time.
So the mapping, are you you're providing mapping to people through TouchDesigner and through MadMapper? No Resolume?
No, just TouchDesigner, no Resolume, no MadMapper. I do everything in TouchDesigner. I actually love MadMapper, fantastic tool. It's so easy to do 2D and 2.5D mappings. 2.5D meaning like 3D stage, and you're faking it by skewing angles. But I don't use it. I'm just, everything's in TouchDesigner for me.
Nice.
Right. So I send these, you have different options to send me content. You could send me HD content over NDI, over HDMI output. We'll capture it. I bring those 2.5 gig and 10 gig by Ethernet USB-C dongles in case people need it. I am mentioning here, you could animate directly on top of this photograph I provided. So this is like a 2D view of, right? If you're a 2D animator and go into the 2D workflow, and you could animate, in this area, and we'll be cropping and skewing in real time, essentially.
Interesting. So you're offering people to either not deliver, but output with their skews, with their mapping, or, flat direct. And then
and they're not really skewing it. They're just animating on top of this photograph. And then TouchDesigner captures their HD output, and we're blocking out the extremities, soft edging it, and skewing it. And in most cases, overlapped double stacked projectors for redundancy, or side by side for scale. So that's also happening on our media servers, because the animator doesn't want to think about the projection mapping. They just want to output an HD or 4K content.
Of course.
And then, we'll data path FX4 will split our computer outputs into the 4 or 8 outputs that we need, depending on how big of the mapping it is. If you're a 3D artist, we provide you with the clean 3D files that are UV mapped nicely. I even provided a TouchDesigner template so you could see an example animation running. Let's open this up. I don't know what it actually looks like. It'd
be great to open that up.
So making this on like
if I'm not using TouchDesigner, let's say I'm using Resolume and I'm making 3D content, are you providing like mapping outside of TouchDesigner? If I want to map and not go direct, like how do you provide mapping to like other softwares?
It would just be mapping that 2D image, right? That 2D image will work on any 2D workflow.
Oh, so but I'm saying like, so if I'm using Resolume and I'm just outputting direct, I don't want to go through your TouchDesigner mapping, are you providing me in the Resolume workflow also a warp and things like that?
No. I've only had that request, I think, like once. It's rare. It's like a nice idea because there's less latency for the animator to go direct. But most animators don't want to deal with the tech time, the uncertainty of multiple outputs, because we're always running a redundant system.
If it's more than one direct output.
Yeah, and our mapping on redundancy isn't done on the projector scale, because you could technically send the same image to 2 projectors and warp and offset on the projectors.
Right.
I don't prefer to do that. I prefer to do it in software world.
Oh yeah, of course.
But if I have an artist that really demands that extra level of less latency, we'll find a way to hook them in.
Yeah, I mean,
we have the HDMI functions and all that good jazz.
And once you map it once, you can always use that image of what it's mapped like inside of Resolume, for instance, as like a background, and just start moving things like warping on a digital image. I've done that a few times where people, I ask because a lot of times I also will map in TouchDesigner, and a lot of times people are using Resolume, and like you said, they don't want to have the latency. We test it, they're not happy with the latency. We try to reduce the latency, but they're still not happy. So I'm almost always forced to make a Resolume map. And throughout time, I've just realized, okay, well, once I map it in TouchDesigner, I can literally just take my cam snapper output as like an image, and it's like all warped and shifted and whatever, and superimpose that into Resolume, and then make slices and warps in Resolume. So it's like a digital mapping basically. So it's like once you map once, you don't need to map it again, because you have the kind of the digital representation of what the warp looks like. You know what I mean?
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah, totally.
This is so cool.
So looking at this example file, it's very very simple, but it gets the job done. So I have that 3D model that I provided for any 3D animator to use in any tool set. I'm showing the example inside of TouchDesigner. I'm taking that 3D model and I'm wrapping it in a geometry container what this lets you do, this is just TouchDesigner's way of allowing you to apply texture and lighting effects. It essentially needs to be in this little geometry container to render. See if there's anything going on here. Nope, only doing that for rendering. And
Camp
I use
Snapper, let's
Camp
go.
Snapper.
Let's go.
Free
Camp
amazing
Snapper.
tool built into TouchDesigner for, you could do the most advanced projection mappings on Earth. You could do 100 projector output with, now you could do real-time blending, which is a very complicated thing to do on a 3D surface to do blending. Looks like I have a little lighting effect that is trying to happen here. Might just have to turn these on. So this is probably just
some lights.
Virtual light fixture moving.
Nice. Hell yeah. Look at that.
Super, super simple. Again, just a template so people could kind of see it in action and build their own thing.
Love it. It also gives artists confidence that like this is going to work, you know, makes you feel like, you know, you're in good hands, and that if you just follow through with what you need to do, make your content, it's all going to work. Like providing this is so valuable.
Oh yeah, and you know what I realized? So I rotated my...
I just saw that you rotated.
Yeah, and if I actually rotate it back, it looks like, yeah, I pre-aligned back onto the photo. So, right, it doesn't matter if you animate the 2D photo or the 3D model, we're aligning in TouchDesigner in the exact same space. So now that I've normalized people's content, whether it's a 3D content or 2D content, I could then map this once in real life, and now people could feed me 2D or 3D. It's now pre-normalized and going through the same mapping engine.
It's I know the correct term is not a pixel map, but I always call it a pixel map because I feel like it's doing the same thing that a LED pixel map would be doing. You're just normalizing the structure of the content coming in. Yeah,
I call it pixel map too.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pixel map. It's just that usually pixel maps are used. Yeah, for sure. Super, super cool. And did you have a chance to play any content at Swanee?
Yeah, I did. The last set, it's like a daytime set. It just became this like crazy collaboration of like 3 or 5 artists just all jamming together. I'm pretty sure Joao from Datagramma was like the final mixer, choosing how to composite in real time all of these VJs VJing at the same time.
It's awesome.
So I actually did a live programming VJ performance because I didn't prepare anything. So my VJ set was literally this TouchDesigner network open, and I'm dropping lights, dropping in edge effects, and just like creating things on the fly. And
I love it.
I did that once before. The last time I did that before the Swanee gig was like 6 years before. It was a disaster. I'm like, I'm never doing a live programming set again. And it actually was fucking awesome this time.
Hell yeah. This is beautiful. Let's shift. Can we look at a more of a interactive installation, maybe something with like a commercial client?
Yeah.
You know, something that's old enough that you won't get in trouble.
Sure. We gotta take a minute or two to find a file.
Of course. The Tipper and Friends, man. I really like, obviously it being on a pedestal is very enticing, but for me, I always wanted to play there because of the extremely high level of, intricacy in the technical things, which is like what excites me. And there's always this, there's a very big discussion about LEDs versus projection mapping. And I think that in America, at least, LEDs are much bigger than projection mapping. So when projection mapping does happen here, it's always very exciting for me. And I think that Swanee is probably, from my knowledge, at least, from my experience, like the coolest, most, high-end kind of projection mapping that's happening. At least, not like massive commercial festivals.
Yeah, I mean, just Tipper events in general. He puts the right team together, the right value on it. It's expensive. It's never like a one-person team. The equipment is, we had almost $1 million worth of projectors at Swanee last year. Like, shit's not cheap. we rent it, obviously, but
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to show you a project not on our website that was a really, really dope project. And I think I've seen if we have we do have an after video. Okay, cool. I can't wait to post some shit soon. I say soon, as I've been saying for 3 years, but
yeah. Since 2021, I'm gonna post soon. I'm gonna, you're actually very interesting because your social media, your Instagram is like such a fun thing to look through. Just the way you organize everything and the pictures that you choose to show. It's like a really nice dive into Eric's life.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you just got to apply that to your business, bro.
You're right. Well, I could say to that. Here we go. There's actually going to be a lot of really cool info in this. I'm about to kind of reveal behind the scenes. And you know what? Actually, I'm gonna pre-show something before I show this project I did for Lego. And I have so many good things to say about it. Working for Lego is so cool because Lego is the only company in the world that has the rights to use like any fucking brand on earth, right? Lego has the rights to use Star Wars, Minecraft, and Porsche. They have Marvel, everything. So it's really cool working for them because you get to work with all this really, really sick IP. And what I kind of want to show before I show you this Lego gig, I mentioned something earlier in this, how valuable it is to optimize the way you win a gig. You hate trying to sell yourself, you hate trying to land clients, you spend so much time and the client doesn't go with you because they couldn't afford it or they were just trying to get free info from your brain. So you should be doing everything you can to optimize your own workflow to land a new client and spend as little bit of amount of time possible. This will let you do the things you like more, like be an artist, or lets you bid out to more clients at once. So many good reasons to do that. So how I did this was I created a deck template. This is very important for corporate clients, especially. Right. You can't just come in and just like sell yourself. You need to like kind of show them things that will inspire them to trust you, that you could handle this. These are random terms I didn't actually work on. It's kind of so right, this is like the deck template. This is the starting point for every single client I'm trying to win. I open up this deck and I rebrand it, and I'll write the client name, and then I'll start going through it. I have these artboards I pre-made, right? My first part of the client deck, I want to just show them inspiration pictures. It's probably something a lot of animators do. And every time you do it, you're going to Google, you're trying to find pictures, and you're doing this every single time. You should start a collection because you're commonly using the same reference imagery.
Interesting.
So now when I have a client looking for LED spatial mapping, I just copy these 3 artboards. If I have a client looking for a certain type of architectural projection mapping, I already have, the artboard and content. So I'm not giving them this whole artboard. I'm choosing the 2 or 3 slides that fits that client, and boom, 2 minutes later, my artboard is done. Here's an example of audio client, architectural content, holographic content, and I'm finding out right away what projection mapping content. And obviously, these are things I vibe with, things that I want to do,
right? And things that you've done in the past as well, mixed in, right?
Yeah, it's a mixture of my work and other people's work that we're going through right now. I do Arduino sensor-based stuff, so I want to really quickly articulate ways that someone could touch something to control.
I love that.
So, I'll copy my 2 or 3 most related slides, and now that's that part of the deck. And I'm going to show the client, hey, here's the 3 options I have for you. We could projection map a tree, projection map a Ferris wheel, or, maybe here's the 2 options. I show them 3 or 2 options, not 6 options. I want to guide them to closure quickly. You know, I show them a really brief network diagram. And I even have this like library of icons. When I had to make a big projector icon, I don't want to have to dig this up again. So it's just here.
It's awesome.
You know, a timeline. And it kind of always looks the same.
Yeah. Timeline is one of those things that we tend to forget when we're pitching or when we're doing something, because it's always like you don't think that that's important until you get the gig. But if somebody's going to give you money, they want to know exactly what you're doing at each point. So having a timeline is super important.
So
even if it's esoteric, even if it's not a real thing, like, yeah, we're gonna start by you giving me money, and then we're gonna start R&D, and then we're gonna go to production or pre-production, and then we're gonna go into there's like it's always standard, but to see it, the client sees that, it creates an extreme confidence. And honestly, for us, having that timeline helps us be better at our work, because we can hit deadlines in time, we can have a good communication with the client. There's no like misunderstanding of when things were supposed to be delivered. I love that you have it here as an important thing, and it's so early on in the process. I think it's really important.
So important. And also keep in mind, when you're selling to a client, you're talking to 1 or 3 people. They probably work with 10 or 2,000 other people on their team. So you're now having a 1-hour meeting selling yourself, and that client's going to turn around, tell his boss, hey, I just had the meeting with Imaginex, and they're going to try to summarize that meeting. So having a deck lets you control in writing how you talk about yourself in that project, and having a timeline now makes the person you were talking to on the phone feel confident to tell the CEO of his company, oh, this is their process. We have to give them a deposit first, and as soon as we do that, they're going to kick off, start doing the fabrication, design meet, whatever. So, you know, you're not just selling to the person on the phone. They're probably not the final decision maker or not in charge of the money. Maybe they're in charge of one of those 2 things, but you need to make him look good at the company.
Yeah, of course. Especially if it's like a big commercial. Nice.
Trusted by some clients we worked on. You know, a little thing slide. And I also have a case study slide. I put this at the very end, and just like the artboard slide, you know, I now have a collection of like 15 beautiful case studies, and those are more artboards. Here we go. Right, in just a nice, pretty way. And I'm not showing them 15 case studies. If this client wants an interactive LED wall, I'll show them this thing I did for the lobby of Fleur, where you walk in front of the wall and your body is triggering events on a timeline to learn about their history. Cool. Show them this art installation for Hennessy, where your body is a paintbrush as you walk in front of the wall.
Beautiful.
And, you know, so I'm just picking the 2 or 3 meaningful things. And boom, I just created an entire deck in an hour by myself.
So good. So good. I love it. I really love it. Having this template that's super useful. Wish I knew about that before I
and that's how I won this Lego gig. I took the template. Here's what, you know, after I got debriefed, I built this really freaking quickly. You know, I took their little image of the experience. You walk around in multiple rooms. It was a Lego escape room with multiple IP. There was a Marvel room. So it was actually funny you mentioned Marvel. There's a Star Wars room. There was a couple other rooms. Create some basic renderings of what these things could look like. And again, we're early in the process, so we don't, it doesn't need to be photorealistic. We obsess over trying to make the most perfect rendering, but that's going to cost you dozens of hours, and it's not going to help you land the gig, honestly.
It's more about, is their branding in the right position? Is their color is correct? Is the space, you know, especially in previs, like a big part of previs is spatial. It's less about what it looks like. It's more of like, is this all going to fit in this space? Are we going to be able to get a camera? How many people are going to be able to fit in here?
1,000%.
And for those, you don't need to be photorealistic. You just need to be accurate, you know, in your sizing and everything.
Building these decks also helps you figure out how much to charge. because
Oh yeah.
as I go through these, right now we're on the network diagrams, and network diagrams can have a lot of lines, a lot of icons. It's very busy, but I want a client to know, hey, we're not just imagining this. Like, we know how to build the tech, and I want to show them that, not tell them that. So, I break it down really simply. Here's the different rooms, right? And then I start, and there's obviously a lot more going on, but I'm kind of just showing them the more simpler aspects. And as I do this is an exercise for myself. All of a sudden, I realize how much power I need. I realize how many sensors I need. I realize the distance, how many cameras I need. I realize, whoa, it's 5 outputs. If I could get this down to 3 video outputs, I only need 1 laptop. I could give the client a cost savings. I'm showing you actually one of our more complicated projects, right? There's a 4 or 5 room escape room where people are triggering sound, lighting, they're pulling levers. We had fabrication partners. We had a secret door that would automatically open, right? Levers, buttons, Arduinos, talking to TouchDesigner. I'll open up that project in a moment. This huge fabricated piece with these are like 30 buttons that you had to click in the right order, also running through an Arduino. Worked with the fabrication team to do the actual structural build. And look, this doesn't look like a professional multi-million-dollar company work. This is quick. I'm trying to spend as little time as possible. I didn't know if I was going to win the gig yet.
Yeah. You want to, it's like a dance, right? You want to go fast because you don't know if you're going to get the actual money, but you want to make sure that the money that you get is going to actually be profitable for yourself and not like a nightmare. Because once you lock in that number, it's very hard to get more money. Obviously there's variables and there's things moving, but most likely a company hired you because of that price that you gave them. So changing it is always a very difficult thing to do. And like you said, like having this somewhat in-depth, somewhat written visual understanding doesn't only help you sell, it helps you understand what you're selling.
So
such a cool project. Do you have a video of it?
I'll show you a little clips from the video, and then I'll show you the TouchDesigner piece. So this isn't on our website, just because we're behind. These were Minecraft levers. Actually, let me pause the video and just talk about a thing or 3. And this video actually walks you through the whole experience room by room. Actually, whatever, I'll just kind of play it. Lots of things that would move when you press things, stand in certain areas, put those little tubes in the correct spot, pull the Minecraft levers.
That's so cool.
Every time you pull the lever, the LEDs would change, and this is all tech that we 3D printed and
so cool.
welded. And
how long did a project like this take to go from selling it to actually and being in production to actually having people in it?
Once it was signed off, the selling took a couple of weeks. It wasn't active work, like in that month or so. It was minimal sell, but once signed off, it was probably 2.5 months, 3 months, which is pretty quick turnaround.
Super quick turnaround for a whole thing like this. Yeah. And how long did you have inside of the place to set it up, like to build it?
All right, like not much time, but honestly, that doesn't. When you learn how to build things for convention centers, for the Comic-Con kind of events, you have 2 days, always, at best case scenario, sometimes a day and a half. So you learn how to build physical infrastructure in a modular way. And there's so many fabrication structural companies that is what they do. They know how to build things for conventions because they know how to build walls that are modular and roll in and clamp together. And obviously mock builds are very important in that industry. Let me open up some of the TouchDesigner projects.
And did throughout the project, was the client was previs part of it, was like, quote unquote testing part of it, or was it more of like once it's closed, you're sending briefs and back and forth? Was there any like actual need to pre-visualize things besides for yourself?
basic previs, not like photorealistic, like trying to get a feel inside the space as realistically as possible. But we wanted to previs the action command. So we wanted to show them visually a lever is pulled, a clip is played. Mm-hmm. Someone stands somewhere and a sound is played. So we allowed people to kind of watch videos of us doing that. As we were building things out, we would send progress video updates. And we did do a full mock build. We rented a place, built the whole thing.
Oh, you did? You did a whole mock build? Wow. That's amazing. That was with the fabrication team. Did you hire the fabrication team, or it came from Lego?
The agency did.
Wow, that's so cool.
This was one of the agencies, Set Creative. Love Set Creative. They're fantastic people to work with. And I'm a technical partner for them. They also have fabrication partners, animator partners, audio design partners. That's what an agency does. And then they also sell like mad. So Set's one of those people that I have recurring work with and love working with. And, I really think the key is to find 5 people like Set, and you kind of have a really happy, healthy career that way, financially and time-wise.
Look at this. This is impressive. I'm getting so excited just looking at this. I don't even know what it does, but it just excites me.
So this is basically like a state machine. So what's going on is we have a previs on the right over here. This is a top-down view of the venue of the escape room. And we're looking at columns, right? It's an escape room that you're supposed to do in order. You're supposed to first pull the lever, and then when you do that, a door opens and you're in a new room, and then you have to find the key and things like that. So in this state machine, let me see if the full screen shares. Sometimes it doesn't with TouchDesigner. Whoops, it went. Oh, here we go. Are you able to see that still?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So for example, we have different rooms. You could see I kind of color coded up here. So you start in the briefing room, then you get to the Avengers room. When you solve the Avengers room, you go to the Minecraft course, the bookshelf, star, etc. So in the briefing room, ignore these giant go commands. We'll get to that in a second. But the first thing that happens is we start the timer. So before this was automated, I can manually click start, and this will run the code to start the physical timer in the room. This is a back end to see that the automation is working, right? It's like a manual clicking of what's going to actually happen automatically. Yeah. So exactly. So I click and I can see the timer start. And what's beautiful about TouchDesigner is you connect a bunch of pictures together to write code. But if a piece of code doesn't exist, you could write your own code using Python or C++ or GLSL. So to talk to this clock, it was a couple lines of 10 lines of Python. So now when I click this button on the back end, it's a Python line saying, send the start command out of the USB port, essentially, or the Ethernet, whatever it was. So now once the timer starts, I want the LED bars to turn on. So boom, I've turned the LED bars on, and then I want the background music to start playing. And you could see I have a little playhead. We could see the timer.
I love it.
So that was the first part of the briefing room. Now,
does this, if I do it automatically, does it show up here?
Show up where?
Like if I pull the lever in the physical world, does it show here that it's been done?
Yeah. So yeah. I'm about to kind of show how that connects.
Okay, sorry.
Really beautiful. No, that's cool. That's cool. So now the briefing just happened. So now the next thing that we're waiting for the user to do in the escape room is to press a button. And when they press a button, we're going to change the color of the LEDs, or maybe it was a flash because it's a pulse button. Like flash the LEDs and play a sound. A quick sound effect, it looks like. So we're kind of progressing through these things. where electronics are happening. We're moving a motor when I press that button. We're changing LED commands over
I see it
here.
showing up there on the previs as well.
Yeah, we have a little basic previs. So this turns the pin spots white. Looks like some of the previs is broken. And didn't open this in the right version of TouchDesigner, by the way.
Okay.
Right, I can play different sound effects by clicking on this. So, but this isn't really these are the individual actions. But what's really happening is the user presses a button and a lot of things happens at once. The lights change, the sound change, and the door opens. So that's what the columns are. When I press this button, it's going to trigger everything in that column, right?
So the user is actually triggering actually those columns.
They're triggering the columns. And they find the Lego piece, it triggers that column. When they pull the lever, it triggers.
Because it gives you different levels to be able to problem solve and understand. Like, okay, so I have 3 things. Instead of having just a column that's doing the 4 things, you actually have access to those 4 things. So you can, technically find out what's wrong. It's very, very cool.
Exactly. So like, how do I know when I press this button, like what to trigger? And basically every item on this list has an ID number. So I could open up this LED change. It opened up on the other screen. Here we go. And this ID number is 3003. And there might be a couple other settings. So now I could say when this button is pressed, here's what I want it to do. I want it to trigger ID 1005, trigger ID 3202, and now I could say also trigger, I already forgot the number, 3101 or whatever it was.
So good.
Do I want it to pulse it, turn it on, turn it off? We'll turn it on. And when that lever is pulled, let's actually wait 5 seconds before triggering that. So I just kind of created a queue.
Yeah.
So
and
now
you can make small tweaks.
Really
also
easily in real time.
You can have somebody who's not necessarily a TouchDesigner developer operate this. You just kind of teach them just basic, this is how this works. And, you don't need to hire a big brain to kind of be there. Or, I mean, you obviously want to be there, but...
I wasn't even on site for this one.
There you go.
I did have a TouchDesigner expert on site, though. So now we've automated all the individual actions with these big queues. So now the next thing was to automate the big queue. And that was done with Arduino. When someone pulled a lever, it would send a command and press the pull lever button, which in then turn would press all the ID numbers it was associated with. So as the user goes through the experience, they're essentially clicking through these buttons in order by interacting with the physical world. And then we would manually reset things at the end of the experience.
You would manually reset. So is this also like if the person's not managing to solve the problem, you would help them? Is that also like the idea of this?
Yeah, we had a voice of God, so we had a microphone system and we could talk to the little kids using this mostly.
Interesting. So it's somewhat manual, like the automation is kind of built in, but there's still a manual element to reset and help people if they're getting if they're bad at it.
Correct.
So, very lovely. Very cool. Oh, let's see the node graph. Oh, show it to me slow.
Okay.
Show it to me slow. Zoom it.
Yeah, I'll zoom. It's very modular. Each one of those containers where we typed in an ID number, they're all pretty much the same. It's pretty much one of these nodes. So it doesn't matter if I'm looking at sound or lighting. I'm going to go to sound because they're a little simpler, or lighting's also simpler. So these are 5 different sound commands. Let's make a new sound command. I could copy and paste it. Cool. And actually, if you look over here, right, it was automatically added to the UI. I deleted it. We're going to do it again. Paste. Watch here. 3, 2,
grid
1.
and row. Children grid and row. No, isn't that? I forgot what it's called, but I think it's on the container that holds it.
Yes. We're talking about like a parameter in TouchDesigner that makes it automatically fit your UI when you add more buttons. So right inside of this little audio trigger, I could go in, I could select a new audio file. And that's pretty much all I actually, you know what? Look, I even have custom parameters. They don't have to go in. So I could choose an audio file. I could override some parameters. And immediately when I click play, it is now playing that file. I actually have to hook it up into the follow up with the system. Same thing with the lighting. It looks the same way. I could go in, choose what DMX channel to change the light, choose the DMX value or the color. And when I click the button, it will go from the default to the new DMX value. The Arduino code was a tiny bit more complicated, but instead of sending a sound file or a DMX value, you're executing Python code. When you click a Arduino button, it executes Python that will stream data to the Arduino to turn a motor or open a door. So yeah, really modular design. We just built this entire software in a matter of 2 months from the ground up, and something we actually used again and again afterwards when we had this state machine problem.
I love it.
State machine being determining if a lever is on or off, or if a sound is playing or not, and what to do depending on what that state is.
Super fascinating. I love seeing the process from selling it to, actually building it and then seeing the final result. Super nice. I think we have time for a short one. One more short one, because I do have some post questions that I want to ask you. And we'll be going for a nice amount of time, which is a good thing.
Let me see what I want to talk about. It's honestly probably something in my case study stack, because those are some of the more beautiful output things. Done a couple of escape rooms, and one for Adobe. That was cool. Oh, it's actually one of my favorite pieces. It's not on my website yet. This will be the next thing I put on my website. I'm not going to open the TouchDesigner network for this. This was, I'm showing you two of the most complicated ones, where this TouchDesigner backend controlled motors and levers and sound and light. This was a art project in the SCAD Museum in Savannah, Georgia. It was like a 6 month install. Weird, beautiful project. Where you're walking through multiple rooms, and you're it's kind of like this thought experiment of the surveillance state and how people just blindly accept terms of services, and they give their data and their likeness away to these big corporations. And the two artistic designers of this project, Deja and Anya, they curated this 4-room experience where you start in this beautiful big white room. Let me actually pull up a picture while we're talking about it. It's on their website, not mine. It's such a cool project. We had like rock stars on this team too. The lighting designer was the lighting designer of SNL. The audio engineer was Amon Tobin. Like everyone on this project was just
that's so cool.
Rock stars. So yeah, the first room, you're in like the contract room, where you stand on this white circle, and when you do it, the white circle starts lighting up like a counter, and that's how you enter into the next space through the door. What you probably ignored behind you is all the writing on the wall, which is an actual legal contract written by a contract attorney for Google. And it's like poetry, but in it, you're giving away so many of your rights. We have the rights to film you, use your photo as we will, put it online. And again, it's kind of the whole point of this project is people just skip through these things. And so then you're entered into a couple of these dark spaces. After that,
wow,
amazing fabric designers, fashion designers, and everyone was just so impressive to work with. And as you enter these spaces, we're kind of faking this selfie museum, where we encourage you to take the most perfect picture of yourself. So we're using hand trackers. These big circle rings are detecting your hands. And we're detecting where your feet are. We're detecting where your eyes are gazing at. And as your hands touch those sensors, they turn white. As your eyes gaze at the gaze sensor, right, it goes from red to white. And so you're encouraged really quickly to try to turn all the red lights white by framing your entire body into this perfect position. And then Emma Tobin's modulated voice comes down, starts counting down. Hold your position. 10, 9. Where you reach 1, sound of a photo is taken. So we've taken now all these photos of you in these perfect fake selfie positions. You enter the last room where we have this like Mona Lisa like painting protected behind glass. We had the lazy security guard actor there for like 6 months. And you stand in front of the glass and we have actual facial recognition to determine who you are and what you did in the experience in the previous rooms. And so when you stand in front of the picture, it pulls up the images that we took of you. But we were actually taking images more discreetly. You thought you were getting these perfect selfie 10-second countdowns, but we were actually taking images of you through like hidden cameras as you were exploring and getting moments of your curiosity. So only you could actually see the photos of yourself through the facial recognition. You stand in front of this and all of a sudden you realize we've been taking these like more raw photos of you exploring the places in a lot of cases.
So cool.
All TouchDesigner backends. Crazy project, just tons of Arduinos, crazy networking, obviously lights and sound and all that multimedia jazz. But we also had like 12 winches and motors, and the facial recognition was a Raspberry Pi system, all running locally in Raspberry Pis that would then
locally
communicate back for the TouchDesigner. Really
like just a webcam into a Raspberry Pi.
Or the Raspberry Pi has a specialized camera interface. You could use webcams, but they have really dope Raspberry Pi cameras. They
have a lens?
Dude.
What?
They're like some of the best camera sensors you can get for the price with lenses. Yeah.
Right. It's like almost like what Oak is doing, right? Like just a board with a camera and you can load whatever you want on it. Obviously different use cases, but super cool.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I guess now Oak's the way to go. This was probably the best thing before Oak, I would assume.
Yeah. Wow, that's super cool. Thank you for sharing this product. It's really beautiful. I'm definitely going to link to it in the notes.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us some of your projects. I feel inspired and like just, really like I'm happy to know you. I feel like, I'm in the presence of some really awesome person. Sorry.
Part person.
Part person, part thing. Aren't we all? So coming straight off of that, I'd love to just, briefly kind of go back to Swanee, working with Datagramma, working on those. I mean, for me, the most iconic, I think, imagery that I can, say that inspired me was the trees. That was then, I think, done at Boom as well. Maybe, I don't know if that was done before Boom or I don't know which one was before, but just in general, that kind of amazing imagery that's extremely simple, extremely like low, low bar of entry, like projector on trees, but done in such a beautiful and thought out way. I love those kind of things. So just like a little bit of touching on that. I also know that you're a big fan of Burning Man. So when was the first time you went to Burning Man? Kind of your favorite part of it? Just give us a little bit of a jump into that.
I'll never ask a burner to talk about Burning Man.
I'm not a burner, it shows.
You want me to talk about veganism? There's the joke, like, how do you know a vegan or a burner is a burner? Because they talk about it. Datagramma, Joao and
David.
David. They've been doing that kind of artwork way before I even knew who they were. Projection mapping on trees and those deities and faces. So I'm actually almost completely uninvolved in their art. They were doing it themselves for a while. They're obviously technically savvy and have, as they were forming their artistic vision around the tree projection mappings, they were doing the projection mapping themselves or with a different homie maybe. And as they started scaling to, from a few trees to a 300-foot wide canvas, the technology became a full-time job on site and more pre-production. So that's really where I come in to support them is you don't have to think about it with me. They, I understand what they like in terms of even down to the projector models that they want and the black deepness and how their content is black and white and how this, if we're going to go with a lamp projector for whatever reason, which models to go with, focus distances, all that good jazz. So, at this point, they just trust me that they're going to show up on site and have a very easy time on the technology. And that way they can just focus on the art. It's cool because now that I've been doing it with them for a lot of years, I got to see the progression of their tool set and also how they create the art. And, in the progression, I've watched a while have a TouchDesigner focused approach where they design their own 3D models, they'll sculpt it in software and then move it around the tree canvas until it feels correct. They'll play with real-time virtual lighting to add some depth and likeness to these models on the trees. But they don't come in and, they don't take a picture of the trees and prepare what faces are going where and what kind of faces. They just built a huge library of assets and are constantly increasing and changing that. And they show up on site and it is like watching a live painter for 3 days straight. They are, when the sun goes down, they're moving in real time a giant Bitcoin onto a tree and they're like, let's try rotating it. No, let's go slower. Let's add some lighting. Like, let's put this space here. And, being there every single hour for 3 days straight, you actually get to really watch the set evolve or their canvas evolve each night and change. They've recently been adding lasers into their canvas in a artistic way, not like a laser show, but, more of like a spatial element where there's eyes all of a sudden shooting laser beams and things like that. Right. I've watched them go from a TouchDesigner primary workflow to doing groundbreaking stuff in MadMapper that I still to this date haven't seen people do, where he was bringing in 3D models into MadMapper and doing real-time 3D lighting in MadMapper. And now he's back on a TouchDesigner primary workflow, I believe. I love working with those dudes. And
me too.
Yeah.
Any the first time that I got to work with them was in Boom, and it was a super amazing experience. Joe invited me and offered me like the opening set of the stage, and I was so excited and felt really like wow, like I'm being trusted to do this crazy thing. And it was such a great experience working with them. I actually met David like 3 years before, I guess in 2019, something like that, at another festival that he wasn't even working at. He just showed up to like help a friend with something. And I think he had just joined Datagramma, or he was just starting to get into it, and he was like I was having some troubles, and the people that were hired to like fix I was doing a projection mapping on a big Ganesh statue. And, as usual, whatever, the projector wasn't put in the right place, so it had to be moved, and nobody wanted to help me move it, and, whatever. Festival was about to start, like, go fuck yourself. And David was just, like, so kind, and, like, he just made me feel like maybe it's not such a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if they don't move the projector, I'll just figure it out and solve it. And it's like sometimes that's all you need, you know? Like all you need is like a good person who you look up to and like, you know that they're smart and highly like technical. And then like a shoulder, you know, like a shoulder to like make you feel like all the work that you did is not invalid and all the work that you did is still going to be cool and great. So yeah, I really love those guys and Diogo as well, who does a lot of their 3D animation. He's like the sweetest, nicest guy. So yeah, big ups to Datagramma. I really hope to have them on soon. They're just very busy. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. We don't have to talk about Burning Man. Fuck Burning Man. Burning Man's lame anyways. Nobody cares about it.
Yeah, don't go. It sucks.
Yeah, don't go outside. Exactly. Yeah, stay at home. I have a note here about the Tetra cube. I saw it on your Instagram, and you know what? I actually saw it like virally way before I even knew you were part of it. And when I was looking into your stuff, I saw it on your Instagram, and what was your involvement there? Like, what did you do for that?
Yeah, so I was in charge of the TouchDesigner piece. It was a 4-person programming team, but it was a much larger team when you come into content and creative directors. I don't know why this piece didn't come to mind right away when you were talking about like a piece I'm recently proud of. Really cool. These are like real, giant 10-foot robots that are meant to pick up cars and weld doors onto them.
Are they Sisus?
No, these are KUKA.
Oh,
robots.
KUKA, okay, yeah. They're like actual production robots, not like film camera robots.
Yeah, correct. So yeah, really small 4-person programming team. Each programmer had a really significant role and a really clear job set. Mine was media playback, but also previs and major control interface to the robot. So starting, stopping it, previs where they were. So the design paths actually were built in Maya. There's this plugin for Maya to control KUKA robots. So you have a rigged robot with like 6 bones, or not a pro animator, as you can tell, and you could actually animate with reverse kinematics in Maya, and then that plugin will output your .mov file. It's just a proprietary file, the movement file, almost like a cheat code 3D printer file. So then I would ingest that movement file into TouchDesigner and use that to previs the robot arm in TouchDesigner, do things like collision detection, make sure the 2 robot arms won't hit each other, with the LED cube on it.
Super smart.
Emergency stopping and media playback and synchronization.
Wow. I love it. I mean, it's such I'm sure you're familiar with like the quote unquote original robot projection mapping that was done by who are they called?
Box by Bonadali.
Yeah, it was like 2009, 8, like super early, super early. And that was like I think all of us.
Piece.
What's what?
Timeless piece.
But it invokes this kind of thing of like using space and movement, not just in the content, but in the actual physical element. And having these LED cubes, I mean, the quality and clarity is so defined. I like having it designed in Maya is such a smart idea, because then you can kind of use the movement to generate physics and understand, like, is this going to fall into this? Is this going to be cool looking at this? Such a cool idea. I didn't know that they had. I know that they have plugins for Unreal, so I guess it makes sense that they would have for Maya as well. But
the animators crushed it by doing physics and spatial illusions that these were physical cubes with things.
What was the pixel map for this? Like, was it simplified? Did you just unwrap it like in a normal way, or was it like thought out in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a UV unwrapping, so an unfolded cube, unfolded 2 cube for that.
Super cool. But you also have the inside of the cube, so it's not just a normal unwrap. I mean, it's like if you unwrap a cube on the outside, you get the T shape, but if you have inner pieces, like how did you structure like the different, or did it not matter at that point? Was it just like the animation came in and you just cut it up?
Yep, animation just came in for me, so it was rendered from Maya with that complicated process that takes a while to learn of, rendering something perspectively onto a 3D object and then rendering that flat to be projection mapped. It's that exact same complicated workflow, but instead of projection mapped, it's getting rendered to a pixel map, which was a UV map that I would then pixel map.
So we're talking about, wait. And
yeah, I got another one. Hell yeah. Let's go start shooting random words. Interactive.
Yeah, I don't have one for that. I should have one for that. Super cool. Yeah, I really love this project. I think it invokes like all the things that are cool about what we do. Movement, aesthetics, physicality, and illusion. The illusion of space and depth. I think that's like for me, like visuals, especially when it's not projection mapping, which is, you have the built-in illusion. When it's LEDs or just content, for me, it's always about taking like a straight line and then making it squiggle, changing your perspective in a unthoughtful way. And it's actually something that Task taught me, is just kind of like, you start off with like flat imagery, and then all of a sudden you make it 3-dimensional. And obviously with Task, he's like on another level of 3 dimensions, because his 3-dimension is like 2-dimension, but it's 3 and it looks all fucking crazy. But that illusion, I think, is where visuals can kind of talk to people more than just like imagery and iconography. It's kind of like you're talking to somebody on a level that's more emotional and human, where you're shifting their perspective without affecting them in a strong way, without taking a psychedelic drug that's not just shifting your perspective, but also opening up a lot of different things. For me, that's like, what I always strive to do is the shift of perception without you noticing it, really. So I think that answers that really well. You are, you were talking about it a little bit before about your LiDAR scans and kind of like how you've upgraded your scanning ability to LiDAR. I know that you are doing lots of scans of nature and landmarks. You haven't sent me one yet, even though you promised you would. So just saying that out here loud that everybody heard. And I actually promised. And
put on the spot.
I promised I wouldn't do that to you, so I'm sorry. But it's at the end, so it's okay. Yeah, what's your process for 3D scanning? Maybe just like a very simple overview, and also what's your reasoning for it? Like what draws you to capture a landscape or a land?
Yep. So I'll start with what draws me to it and why. 2 reasons, and both are equally as important. One is to get a site map. I want to work in my underwear in my home, not flying 200 times a year like I have before. So, going to a venue in a space and taking a really high resolution 3D scan will let me answer questions that you can't round, right? If I need to rig a projector to the ceiling, I need to know where the HVAC is, and where truss are, where like beams are. I need like very, very precise accuracy. And I can also create previs that way too. So yeah, it's really getting that site marking. And I use it for projection analysis. Even my 2D projections, I do a 3D workflow. I use Mapping Matter to do my projection analysis, which is a single-purpose tool to plan your
unfortunately,
projection.
Was bought by Disguise, but whatever. Let's not talk about that.
I had a forever license, which was not forever
did?
once it got bought by Disguise. Yeah,
I thought you could transfer it. Wasn't there? There was a transfer or something? No.
It didn't. It didn't.
Motherfuckers.
It did for a little bit, and not anymore. Yeah.
Bummer. That software is great.
I use it to analyze my projection using Mapping Matter and a 3D scan. I get to learn exactly what lens to use, exactly which projector to use, where the projector goes, and if it's going to be in focus or not, and even shadow analysis. If I'm doing like an interactive floor, I could minimize shadows by playing around with different scenarios. More recently, I've been using it as part of my animation workflow for Pretty Lights, where if you haven't seen our last show, we developed a real-time camera system in 3D. So we're capturing our entire environment in 3D. And what this lets us do instead of a regular camera is I could create these impossible camera looks. I could virtually fly my 3D camera over Borum, the keyboardist's fingers, and get into these impossible camera shots. So we'll the band's doing a completely live jam set. They'll do homage to the cities they're playing in often, based off of some historical significance or artists that might have be associated with that city. So I'm doing the same thing visually, where I might 3D scan the venue or a iconic part of the city and use it in my virtual camera shot. You just pulled up a cool subway scene, which I actually purchased, but merged with the actual band members. And, so this is all real time 3D models of the band members playing. It's almost like a virtual production set in a way.
Yep.
Or like a VR.
Yeah, it's like it's a virtual reality. It is virtual production. I mean, I would think a bit more of like traditional virtual production, like in a volume where you're just kind of like you have a virtual camera and you're kind of moving things around. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely mind blowing. I'm actually upset that I never got to see it live. And to be perfectly honest with you, the first footage that I saw of it, I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest, because I was like, oh yeah, Eric's been talking about this for so long and I know all the technology involved and it's so like extreme. And I don't know, the first footage I saw of it was like just a few simple things. And I was like, oh, like I know there's more there. And then watching you progress from show to show and seeing it like build and get better and better and more intricate, I was like, fuck yeah, like you did it, like I was so excited for you.
Cool, I'm glad you saw some of that progression. There's a technical challenge with it. My specialty is TouchDesigner's optimization. So when we did our first show in Mission Ballroom, our point cloud was 500,000 points, not at hovering at 45 or whatever. 500,000 points. By the end of the tour, I got to 2 million points at 60 FPS. So, over 4x the amount of data. I upgraded from 6 sensors to 8 sensors, and all this is just computational bottlenecks, and I'm constantly trying to optimize in battle. And then the other part's obviously creative. I increased the 3D effects I could do, the virtual scenes. Every single week, every city I was in, I was like, oh, we're in New York, let's do a subway. Oh, we're in Oregon, let's get a giant tree into the scene. So definitely progressed. And unfortunately, you missed it because we're just looking at ways to make it worse and degress for next tour. So
I know that's not true. Next time is going to be even better. Okay, so your lifestyle is very nomadic. You do a lot of working from remotely. I think it's very clear from your Instagram. If we just quickly look in here, I mean, look at all these amazing places Eric's been. And the funny thing is that while you're doing these cool places, you've been doing all these massive corporate commercial projects that we just looked at. So that's like an extremely unique and powerful lifestyle that is, very powerful. Definitely follow Eric on Instagram. So yeah, what are your some tips for that? Can you give us some advice on that and, just your experience with that?
Yeah. I did van life for the last 2 years. I actually just sold my van recently, but I'm still nomadic. I'm doing month-to-month Airbnbs in different states and areas. There's a difficult part for me because, as you can tell from my work, I have a lot of hardware design, 3D printers, Arduinos, and once I decided to work remotely, fully, essentially without a studio, I really didn't have the same opportunities I did before to do microelectronics, which is something I love and I'm very good at, but not an expert. So it was kind of a silver lining because it really made me focus on things I could do remotely, which is technical direction, managing people, and software development. And those are things I love doing and have gotten very good at. And that also just provided more successful gigs, better peace of life and work-life balance, because I'm better at those things ultimately. I mean, honestly, I've been wanting to do van life for so long. I got my van. I started shopping for a van 3 weeks after Starlink was proved that it could work outside of your home. So, anyone watching this, the computer is part of their lifestyle. It's part of their passion, their career, their hobbies. And Starlink is really what enabled me to be more free in van life. Mm-hmm. Which is almost an ironic thing to think about because you feel like if you're in the middle of the woods and you're connected to the internet, you're actually not disconnected. Mm-hmm. But if I didn't have Starlink, I wouldn't be able to go into the middle of the woods. I'd have to stay close to towns or it would have been a lot more difficult. So it's great. I had a little portable desk. I would just kind of go from national park to national park and forest and BLM land, which is free land across the West Coast mostly. Set up a desk, set up all my self-driving car sensors, my laptops, my whole cabin was solar powered. So my whole roof was solar. I had a huge battery pack I built out. And every now and then a stranger would find me in the woods and it just looked like a madman with all this technology and people couldn't even comprehend what it was. These people that have never been in a city before and like seen like modern tech, would see all my self-driving car sensors and be like, are those fishing rods? I'm like, what?
I'm fishing for data.
Yeah. Ultimately it's like anything else. It's kind of hard to jump into, whether you're moving or trying to change a significant part of your lifestyle or your work. Eventually you just kind of say fuck it and I'm going to do it, and things kind of you make it happen, make it work for you.
Hell yeah. What was there anything specific besides Starlink and internet that made it seem to you that this is like viable, this is actually going to happen? What made
the
it work
pandemic?
That's so great.
Just like I got some freedom. But I mean, I did that way after recovery from the pandemic. I did it up until a few months ago. Really good connection to the internet was important. I had 3 forms of internet and a satellite phone, right? I just had to be reliable to clients. That was important.
You had a satellite phone as well. Was that like did you ever have to use it?
Nope. Waste of money.
Waste of money, huh? Interesting.
Yeah. It's just as expensive as Starlink and got like 70 minutes a month. But I think, no, I don't really. No, I think anyone else that's trying to do a nomadic lifestyle, their adventure, their clients, their type of work is just going to be different than mine. That like you just got to do it. I would just be like, yeah, you could do it. It's totally possible. It was actually really easy. And I've probably never had as much time freedom as I had in my life, which was a mental decision that I'm not going to work 100 hours a week anymore. I'm going to go on hikes and turn my phone off sometimes. And then all the logistical things, they were unique to me. And I solved them very quickly and early on.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Just super power, portable desk, and those logistics.
Yeah,
were easy.
I mean, seeing your lifestyle, extremely inspiring. I never really managed to do a nomadic lifestyle. I definitely traveled for long periods of time, but I never really managed to like quote unquote settle down in it. I think it's a very beautiful thing to do, especially if you're an artist, especially if you're a creative. I know for myself that like living in rural areas versus the city, I'm extremely more productive. I'm more happy. healthier. And sometimes I think a lot of people think it's counterintuitive to leave the city where all the work is and all the things are happening. And I totally respect that. Like, I don't knock on cities. Like, I met my wife in a city. I started my career in a city. But I feel like at some point it was very clear to me that the city was not benefiting me. There was no, positive, or at least the negative outweighed the positive. So I definitely urge people to try and focus on that and see if there is a negative aspect to them being inside of this hustle bustle nonstop energy. A lot of people love it, strive from it. I myself did as well. But I think a lot of people get sucked into it and wake up 10 years later and it's like, wait a second. Okay, I did all these things and I'm successful and everything's good, but I'm like sucked into this energy hole that I cannot get out of. So I definitely adhere to people, or hope people can see that about themselves. Last question, and maybe short, maybe long, but nature and spirituality and kind of like the importance of traveling and seeing different cultures and fauna and nature and the awe of nature, kind of very clear to me as a spiritual person that the awe of nature is kind of this experience of spirituality that people are seeking in church or through ceremony. I think that they're all kind of the same thing. That feeling that you get when you climb a mountain and see a beautiful view is the same feeling that I, as a child, had in synagogue and praying. It's the same thing. Yeah. So yeah, how does that talk to you? Where do you meet that?
Yeah, very important to me. I'm a very spiritual person, especially when it comes to nature.
I should have a button for a spiritual person.
Especially when it comes to nature and the universe and matter, non-matter, and how I believe everything's connected, physically and non-physically. It drives a lot of very big goals in my life, things I haven't even touched on outside of my last 10 years of work, and it's going to drive the next 10, 20 years of my career, which is actually not even in this industry or music or entertainment and events. I find so much value in. We kind of started off, how did I get into this? And I was a fan and super inspired by these experiences. You go to a rave and a show and people have so much togetherness and harmony. Even historically, music has brought cultures together and races together onto dance floors. It's a very accepting culture, especially EDM, but even punk shows and things you might not expect in the music field, where there's a lot of respect and acceptance for different types of love and different types of friendships and ideas in a very positive way. So, I hope I've contributed to that environment by providing towards the experience. And, I hope people have been on my shows and have changed their mindsets on closed ideas and have fallen in love and things like that. I find so much value in that.
Hell yeah.
And just the universe inspires me. It's my personal life goal and mission to try to fix this one piece of the universe that I'm aware of that's not in harmony, which is our planet and our people and our destruction of the planet and destruction of each other. And I think anything to contribute towards healing that is the best thing you could do. And I feel like I've done that in some ways over the last 10 years. And, I'm just going to do it in a different way, trying to solve climate issue, which is, an urgent issue.
Hell yeah.
A very different issue. In my van, I had a map of the country, and I would, put thumbtacks when I saw waterfalls and national park pans. and I got it custom printed, and I had one quote on it from Albert Einstein, which was, I'm probably not going to do it verbatim, but look deep into nature and you'll find the answers. And yeah, it inspires me to heal and connect.
It's beautiful. And I think, we're very lucky to have this outlet of art and creation, especially in the world today where things are so insular and everybody's tribal and not in a good way. And like you said, we don't think about the earth in that sense. I think that when you're sitting and creating something, even if it's something technical, when you're sitting, creating and doing problem solving or high level creative thinking, you're actually healing the world. You're actually healing the universe because you're ingesting, external information, right? Ideas are, they're in your mind, but they're energy and they exist outside of us and they kind of just exist. And you're kind of taking it and bringing it down into like a physical place, into like a real actual thing. Even if it's digital, it's still a physical thing. And I think that in itself, especially if you're coming at the art form in a good way and you want to do it to make people feel good, make people experience something, even if you're trying to sell a product, you're still trying to do something that's in somehow a positive experience for people that they'll enjoy and laugh and, think. And I think that on a very, small level, maybe even a big level, that is kind of healing the world. And I personally believe that, the actual fixing of our problems in the universe, and well, not the universe doesn't have as many problems as we have on Earth, but at least that we know of. But the fixing the problems on Earth start from yourself and start from the people around you. Activism is a really good thing, and I personally don't take part in it, but I don't knock it. I think it's good and it has value, but for me, it always made more sense to be an activist to myself and to the loved ones that are around me. I just think that I strive from feedback, which is why I love VJing so much, because you're getting the creative, your creative release is being met with a response right away in real time. And I always felt that with activism for the people around me, the loved ones, feeling, trying to make their lives better by making my life better, etc. It was very reactive and instant, whereas, a big activism, you don't really see what's changing. And for me, it always made sense to start from there. And I hope that in my life, the next 10, 15, 20 years, I'll be able to take that and actually, like you said, bring it into the change, into like the bigger change, like solving climate change, things like this of those nature. So I really resonate with that. And on that note, I wouldn't
say bigger, it's just different. It's, to me, just as important to bring people together and change people's hearts and souls as it is to solve a very physically based issue.
100%.
Just different.
It's just different. Suffering is relative. Somebody who stubbed their toe can be in massive suffering, and the same as somebody who is in a, let's not get political, but in a bad place in the Middle East somewhere. So that the suffering is definitely subjective and relative. So yeah, a big change like climate change and a quote unquote small change to your neighbor or your brother or something like that have the same impact in a universal sense, I think. On that note, this was awesome, Eric. Really one of the longest ones I've had, which is a testament to how interesting and fun you are to talk to. I really, really appreciate you taking the time and going through the technical issues with me.
Don't publish all the technical issues. We're not supposed to have them.
There was no technical issues.
This was a pleasure. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to say or plug or anything like that before we go?
No.
Good. Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, and much love, my brother.
Much love.
Wow, that was just great. Thank you so much, Eric, for sharing all that knowledge, giving us such a valuable insight to your processes and seeing and being inspired on these amazing projects that you've done and accomplished. I had a great time talking to you. Thank you. Big thank you and shout out to Manismash for letting us use his music in the intro. Check out Manismash's music. It's really amazing. Next week's guest is very special. I'm super excited to have him on. I'll give you a hint. He's a non-crystalline solid. See you next week.